If we
pushing it, so
begin the school,
not have
would everyone rise
elections
for the Pledge of
between
Allegiance? We say this as individuals in unity. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mr. Booker.
I'm here.
Mr. Fiersteos.
Here.
Mr. Penrod is absent. Mr. Brubaker is absent. Mr. Raymer.
Present.
Mr. Esposito. Here. And I'm present. So, any additions, deletions this evening?
No additions or deletions?
Hearing of patrons?
Good evening. Well, I've got a 9-year-old son. He's really into science and physics and all that good stuff. A few weeks ago, he was watching a documentary about Albert Einstein. I wasn't watching very closely, but I happened to catch one quote that I'd like to share with you today. Einstein said, "The world is a more dangerous place to live, not because of the people who do evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it." I think this quote highlights a major issue in society today: complacency in the face of injustice. It suggests that the greatest threats we face don't come from those who would do harm, but from the apathy of those who see that harm being done and choose to allow it to go unchecked. The worst danger isn't the obvious damage someone may cause, it's the more subtle indifference of those who ignore it. There are times when it feels like there's no end to the problems of this world. There are too many examples of evil, injustice, inequity, oppression, and suffering that fill the headlines and our news feeds. How do we talk to our children about these problems? What message do I want to send to my 9-year-old? Do I want him to become an adult who is too fearful to speak up? Do I want him to grow into someone who is indifferent to the problems that others face? Or do I want him to recognize his responsibility for addressing the challenges of the world? To have the courage and empathy to stand against the injustice he will see in his everyday life? To recognize that no matter how small, every action counts and every inaction counts. One of the members of your board has acted in a harmful way, and unfortunately, that can't be undone. But don't waste the opportunity to demonstrate to our students how a responsible citizen should act in the face of injustice. Show them how to speak up and become part of the solution, rather than sit back and passively endorse this behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Hypothetically speaking, let's say that you're a town manager, which is very much like a superintendent. On the hierarchy chart, you have a lot of people that report to you. You also have an elected council that you report to. And while the council is the overall governing body for the entire town, individual members do not have an authoritative power. As the town manager, what would you do if one of these council members asked you for preferential treatment, like making sure that their road was paved first? If a council member asked you for the contracts for a particular service the town used and told you he thought his company that he worked for could do better? That a council member confronted some town employees who were out of town on official business driving a town vehicle just because they used it to go get something to eat? Or a council member leads a push to replace a legal service that the town has used for a very long, or the town has used for a very long time without even talking to the attorneys who have represented you very well for many years? Or finally, a council member showed up to the street department unannounced and asked to pull particular workers out of the scheduled meeting to talk to him because he was a council member. And the council member did all of these things without the knowledge or approval of the other council members or as a town manager. once again, as the town manager, what would you do? The actions of the council member are obviously not good for the climate or culture of this town, not to mention the fact that their actions exceed the authority of council member, and in some cases their actions seem to be very much self-serving and in direct conflict of interest. Well, I'm not a town manager, but as a superintendent, I talked to the board member who did some similar things. I did so because I felt like it was my responsibility to make sure that our school board was acting as a board and not individuals with personal agendas. I did so because if I don't address an issue that I know about, then I'm in turn condoning it. I refuse to avoid a potential conflict out of fear, knowing full well that some people in positions of authority don't respond well to pushback. I can proudly say that I've worked with 9 different board members, and 8 of them I would trust to be able to have a professional conversation with and move on. But all it takes is one. One board member, for whatever reason, can't separate personal and professional. In fact, when my issue was first brought up at a public meeting, a board member used the word personal. It wasn't personal to me. I was doing my job as a superintendent to do what was right by the district that I was hired to represent. And some of the board members know very much what I'm talking about because they warned me, be careful what you say to him or watch your back. And this was all before the fraud even occurred. At the last meeting, one of the board members said something in response to a grit presentation that stuck with me. They said something to the effect of, sometimes in life, you know what, doing the right thing, you don't get incentivized. Sometimes it turns around and it hurts. It hurts to do the right thing, but you're always going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I can confidently say that my direct and honest conversations with board members were the right thing to do for Manchester Community Schools. And right now it does hurt. It hurts because I'm not going to be able to continue to serve the students and staff of this district. It hurts because I feel like I was denied an opportunity for my family. And it also hurts because this board continues to remain silent on something that I truly believe that they know is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeling. Any presentations?
There are no presentations or recognitions this week. We will definitely have some in May because we've had a lot go on here the last couple of days.
Yeah, we got a lot of people to recognize, so yeah. Financial report. Oh, no, I hope we got the final. I hope you've got the file.
I'm walking slowly just with a computer glitch, so it's going to be a very verbal presentation.
I better pull it up now.
Okay. I will apologize, it was sitting on my desk this morning and I assumed that it had been passed on. All right, so imagine there's a chart up here with green dots, red dots, and yellow dots. For the education fund, for the...
Hey Jeff, do you want to do another one? Let me scan that, and if you want to do the other one, I'll scan that and come back to that. You want to do that? Sorry about that.
I'll walk faster this time.
Should we? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, how about we'll come back to financial report.
All right.
Let's move on. Consent items. So we've got claims, minutes.
Have some
Well, I can't get it to pull up either, so.
I've got some resignations.
You want to read the resignations?
So claims and minutes, and then resignations, we have Annie Baker, part-time cook at MES, Caitlin Dotson, sped paraprofessional at MES, Haley Haddon, teacher, MES, Michaela Monroe, she is a volunteer volleyball coach for MIS. Those are the resignations. And then, do you want me to do them all and then just go back and do?
Sure.
Okay.
Grants.
Yep, grants, 2 grants, one $5,000, Good Deeds Grant for the Edge 85 CNC, for a CNC machinery from Strauss Family Charitable Endowment, Auschwitz Community Servant Discretionary Endowment, and the CAPE Endowment. And then $5,000 Good Deed Grant for Manchester Elementary Preschool Playground from Strauss Family Charitable Endowment, Strauss VL Feeds Incorporated Charitable Endowment, and the David and Jane Grandstaff Charitable Endowment.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And then,
Thank you, Strauss family.
and then donations.
Donations. Somebody like to read donations?
I got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
We have a $2,500 donation to MES for the MES Preschool Playground from David M. and Patricia S. Grant Charitable Fund. $100 to the high school for the Apes Trip West from Manchester Moose. $200 to the high school Apes Trip West from Stephen and Patricia Brubaker. $300 to the high school for the Apes Trip West from North Manchester Kiwanis. $500 to the high school baseball program from McKee Mortuary. $750 to the high school's FFA program from Cortiva Agriscience. $500 to the high school's Unified Sports Program from an anonymous donor. $1,000 to the high school's Science Olympiad program from an anonymous donor, and $1,000 to the high school's choir program from an anonymous donor, for a total of $6,850. Thank you very much. It is greatly appreciated.
Yes, thank you, community.
There are no facility rental requests on this agenda.
Motion to approve consent items.
So moved.
Mr. Espis, Mr. Bucher, Mr. Esposette seconds. Discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, Randy. Ready? Awesome. We could have just kept rolling with it.
Okay. This will be easier than me trying to walk you through it. So we're going to start with operations. Again, red doesn't necessarily mean bad. It simply means that we underestimated. So in operations fund, if you come across the top, total revenue, we underestimated total revenue for the month by only $2,000. Total expenses, we underestimated by about $2,200. So for the month, we were up $200, which better be over than under. Going on down with expenses, so when we get to the monthly balance, again, you get 2 draws a year in your operation fund. That's after taxes are paid. So we'll get a draw sometime in June, another in December. So we're operating negative 10 months out of the year. What we're not to do. One thing we're looking at for 25 is doing an operation cash flow through Indiana Bond Bank, and we'll see how that goes. We haven't even started that process yet. So for the month, we're looking very good. Our estimates are really much online. So Randy, back up to the education fund. So as you can see, for our total revenue, we actually took in $41,000 more than what we anticipated. So our total cash, we're up $198,000. Again, if you recall, March was a 3-pay month. So we get a draw from the state once a month, and you have to, spend that out over the 30 days or whatever it may be. So again, when you come back down for salaries, we underestimated total cost by $7,000, total benefits by $127,000, total claims by $22,000. So we ended the month with $157,000 in the black. For the year so far, we're $198,000 into good in education fund. Again, when we made this for DUAB 10 months ago, we tried to be very conservative on revenue and high on expenses. So far, it looks like we're playing that game pretty well. So any questions on cash flow?
How often does that then get reported back to DUAB?
On the Tuesday, or the second of each month after we close the month.
Oh, okay.
So they get this live. It was interesting, now they've been seeing this for 5 months now. The person down there that we've been coordinating with said, you may want to check column FF, row, let's see, column FF, row 15, because I think there's a sum error on that. Which there was. It was a equals instead of a sum. We changed it to sum, we gained $2,000. But that's how detailed they are. I mean, they are that far out on this spreadsheet. So.
Then is it just something that they look at, or then do they report back? And I mean, what's that conversation like?
If that were red, they'd probably be here.
Okay.
So again, we were trying to be very conservative when we did all this. So right now, they check us. As long as we're showing this, they are happy. But they take a look at the entire cash flow that we showed you before. So it's both education fund, operation fund, all the assumptions and assurances. They see that entire packet every month. Okay. Do you want to accept this, and then I'll go into another side of the presentation here.
Motion for approval.
Motion.
Mr. Fearstow, second. Mr. Raymer, discussion.
Quick question. Is the remaining ESSER dollars in the education fund at this point, or is that separate again still?
Separated. That's
Separated.
It's always been separated from day one.
Okay.
Those funds will be expended second week of May at this point. So we'll have another, I'm sorry, for those that are in the audience, the question was, is ESSER dollars embedded in this? The answer is no. Currently, ESSER dollars for us will expire mid-May, so we'll have one pay in May, 2 pays in June, 2 pays in July, and a pay in August. So those revenues will come out of rainy day. And then new contracts go into effect. Everybody who's being paid out through ESSER will be paid out at that point. So we're estimating, this is high end, but about $200,000 coming out of rainy day to pay off the ESSER.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, over the past several months.
we gotta vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Jumped the gun there. Okay, the past few months I've been talking about ways of raising revenue to address some structural issues and updates and things like that within the school district. Talking to bond counsel, actuarials, we've come up with a proposal that I'd like to go through. This is just information, no action necessary. If you want to take action, it is simply to give Mr. Castle and me authority to continue with this process. So that there's not locking into anything. So Randy, if you could skip to page 12. So this is a hybrid approach, and again, general obligation bonds are bonds that usually are short-term. It's limited by formula of how much money you can raise. For our district, it's about $3.5 million. $2 million that was used up. The capacity was used up on the construction project. So right now we have about $1 million capacity that we can raise in a general obligation bond. So $1 million with the needs that we have. As a prime example, we need to update all student computers. That one fell swoop, $600,000. So again, some big ticket items that we're talking about. So talking to bond counsel and the actuarial, what we've kind of come up with is a hybrid approach, which is shown here. So this is our current debt load. So 45 cents on debt service. This scenario adds 0.096 cents total rate. So rate would be right around $1, $1 if assessed values hold flat. So we would take and issue a general obligation bond, which would be a 1-year bond and we would raise $1,055,000. It'd be paid off in December of 25. That gives you additional capacity then in 26 and beyond And each year that you have that you don't raise a general obligation bond, you add more revenue because you're paying down on the current GO bond that we have. Okay, so 1 year GO bond, and then at the same time, we'd also issue a first mortgage bond, which would be a series 2025, which would be paid off in 29. Again, this is for a first mortgage, a very short-term bond and prepayment cycle. Those two combined raises right about, well, you do the math, $4,900,000. Okay, just short of $5 million. Payback in basically 5 years, with 9 cents roughly on the tax rate. So if you go to the next slide, 13. So this is how it amortizes out. So again, this is our current debt load with the connector. That includes first mortgage and general obligation bonds that were committed to that project. This year, we bought a bus through Indiana Bond Bank. We are not going to do that for 25, but this shows that we would pick that back up in 26. But the rate would stay the same because you have assessed valuation growth. So it would keep the rate relatively flat. But we'd be buying buses through Indiana Bond Bank. This would be a 1-year bus purchase. So we'd buy 2 buses, but it'd be paid off each year, just like we did this year. And then you would have the 1 year with a GO bond, which would be paid off in 25. So it'd be on our 25 budget. We'd have a payment in June and a payment in December. And then that bond would be paid off. And then you'd have the first mortgage bond that would kick in, and you would have kind of accelerators. So 1,156,000, 1,158,000, 1,159,000. So it's pretty much balanced over the 4 years. And then when you got to 29, okay, so if you come across, when you get to 29, you see that the rate drops off. So you would be doing this and have a discussion at 29. Do you do another loan? Do you do a GO bond? Because you'll have capacity for about 1.6 million at that point, 1.7. You could do another first mortgage. You could do a larger long-term bond if you wanted to. So this would be a relatively short-term project money that would go towards equipment, track resurfacing, tennis resurfacing, carpeting. I have a whole list of things.
So our priority list, right?
Yep. So what we did last summer, I met with all the different groups and people and everybody else, and got a list from them as far as things that needed to be accomplished, and put that to music and some other else, and came up with a whole series of procedures, things that needed to get accomplished. And you have that list. So it is everything from a bus in 25, ordering the ride for 26, school equipment as far as computers, carpet replacement, some painting, a lot of resurfacing of tracks and things like that, tennis courts, junior high basketball court, you name it, it's on the list. And when we get all said and done, the lists that we have, we're short about $180,000 from everything we're borrowing to everything that's on the list. That's how close we've come. And that sounds like $180,000 isn't close. But when you're looking at 5 years with projects in some cases that are $300,000 or $400,000 each, that's not bad. And we're not putting any supplementals in here either. So we may have some money in operations that we can keep, we can queue up for some of this stuff. So it should be pretty flush when we get all said and done.
Are most of these are mostly, a lot of these are estimates, correct?
Oh yeah, everything's estimated.
So yeah, okay.
Yep.
So maybe a little less or maybe a little more.
And again, you've been around me long enough. I hope that these estimates are high. But, construction costs right now are 7-8% increase on an annual basis. So.
Yeah, but that's inflation, they're working on that.
Yep.
And with interest rates, so from the basis of the board, like what Casey, you kind of asked, and so what we've talked about before is trying to keep the tax rate flat as possible. I mean, we're pretty county residents are at a high tax rate, right? Our county, we're at a pretty high tax rate. Do what we can there. Stay flexible, so stay within, 3 to 5 years, so you're not, when I came on the board, we had some long-term debt from like years ago, and so and that's not knocking anyone, because you gotta make a decision based on interest rates, how much do I borrow at this low rate? Right now, the rates are high, right? So they're, to nobody's fault, but we were kind of locked with some long-term debt, so we looked to stay a little flexible in that, but thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Well, so the process, so get into that. The next step is to officially allow Mr. Castle and I to proceed with gathering data. You're not locked into anything. It is simply working with financial managers, bond counsel to say, yes, we're interested in doing this. You're not on the hook until you actually approve selling the bonds. So you're, obviously, you've been through this, you're months away from that. So I can bring this back at May and ask for official board action to allow Tony and I to proceed with this, or you can do it tonight. Again, it doesn't lock anything in, it just gives us an extra month, which if this works, then we can get the cash in earlier than later. So.
Gather all
Did I miss anything?
you want.
Well, let's,
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit is if we can proceed with gathering information and contacting bond counsel and putting those things together, then for later board approval of sale of bond, it just can, one, is going to give you more information, more accurate information. Two, it's going to generate, if and when approved, some much needed cash for repairs. In it, you've seen the list, and for those listening or watching online, I mean, it ranges from fixing toilets to resurfacing the sports facility, tracks and everything in between, painting, doors, you name it, lighting. So really it would just allow us to proceed to contact them, to start gathering information, to provide you more accurate information than before making a decision to move forward. The benefit is, for example, right now, we need new devices. Those devices could come in September, or those devices could come in November, depending on how we move on this. So, really just seeking approval to move forward with gathering information, not with the sale of a bond at this point, but being able to work with them to say we're interested in pursuing this and getting more accurate data and then providing it to you.
Are we all in on that list, or are we going to do it by attrition to where we try and maintain net zero as we go?
well, this is
Or-
facilities list, so.
You're saying of the
Facilities
things,
improvements.
of the things to get repaired, are you
Correct.
saying?
Mhm.
Right, so as Dr. Stevens said, he collected a list from
Here.
Jack, from
You got this, right?
admin, from coaches.
different dates
I
on it.
mean, it's a pretty all-encompassing list. Then we ask for priority items, like what are now things.
But is this all encompassing? No. I mean, there's going to be, we may walk out here tonight and somebody come up and say, look, we need a new chiller somewhere. So this will be dynamic as time goes over. Is this going to be a case of what are the priorities? And right now, based on the 24 list, you have the priorities that have been identified. Track should have been replaced a couple of years ago, in all honesty. Tennis court, if you've walked the tennis court, there's some nice places that if you are really good, you want to hit because nobody's going to be able to return the ball because it's going to fly somewhere odd. So those type of things are easy. The playground at preschool, prime example, that should have been replaced a long time ago. I know Robert's talked to me before about carpet and places that basically carpet is as old as the building. So those are things that, yes, they need to get done. They need to be done a while ago.
Well,
But
listen,
there's going to be other things.
we've had a list since I've been on the board 6 years, and that list isn't too much different than a list. But when you don't, it comes to finances to take care of that list. So that, over the last 6 years, there's been a lot of digging out of the hole in financial land, and then there's been events that have helped us get back in the hole. This is where we need to go to take care of this list, so we don't have a list anymore, basically.
Yeah.
So if we want to give them some type of approval, I have to make a motion. for a vote. Are you guys?
Casey, you kind of did, right? You're okay? You want to make the motion?
Sure. Second, please.
Well,
The motion is to gather information.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Actually, the motion is to allow this council and I to work with the financial experts or managers. So,
Now, I would like to throw one little thing in there, Dr. Stevens. You work with who you want, but I think it would be pertinent that we get two different views from places. Would you agree with that or no? You just want to work with one?
You're going to have to, because otherwise you're going to be in conflict.
Yeah.
Because everybody's going to want their piece, and they only get paid after you sell lots. So they don't get paid up front. So if you don't pull the trigger, nobody gets a dime.
So Baker Tilly is who you want to go with?
And a guy by the name of Jeff Quantabush from Barton.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
5-0.
Thank you.
No, thank you, guys. Really, I'm gonna be honest with you, I think that's part of your job, right? So we'll give you, we'll give you approval to do it.
Well, if this doesn't work out, you blame me. That's how it works. So.
Recommendations for approval, employment.
Employment, we have a recommendation for a business teacher, Scott Bohonik. He's would be coming to us from Cherubusco, highly recommended. Is able to teach dual enrollment, which we're excited about. To be offered with the new graduation requirements, there is a dual enrollment component where kids can get points toward graduation. So be a good hire. Good hire for us, comes highly recommended.
All right. Motion for approval. Mr. Raymer, second. Mr. Estes, discussion. Good, I think, dual credits just
Yep.
growing. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, Randy. We're gonna do these together. MES Student Handbook, MIS Student Handbook, MJS Student Handbook, Technology Handbook, and Student Athletic Student Handbook. Second reading. Motion for approval. Do you want to talk to this any before we?
I mean, most of the changes are cosmetic. They've been dates, change of a name, so nothing substantial.
Okay. Motion for approval. Mr. Raymer, second.
Second.
Mr. Fierstos, discussion?
Do we,
Are we doing all of them at once?
yes.
Okay.
Is there any addressing of the cell phone language that came out of the legislature?
There is
yeah.
not, that is something that has to go in by July 1.
Gotcha.
We have cell phone language, it's just going to be tightening up that language a little bit. Yesterday was the first from the ISBA, the School Board Association, where they're starting to break down legislation for superintendents and how to interpret it, the impact. And so the cell phone one actually just came out today. We got one yesterday, cell phone today.
Okay.
So that is something we'll be cleaning up and tightening up, and that'll probably come to you in May for first read, June for second, and then starts July 1.
Is that one of those mandatory policies that we have to do from the state?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
a new law passed on no cell phones in the classroom. There are some exceptions, but they're just tightening down
Okay.
on it.
Oh, yeah, I
So
read
there's
it.
probably at least 5 or 6 policies to be rewritten or created that I know, right?
Yeah, there'll be a
So
few.
we're gonna have to make a decision. So in the past, we've operated with some feedback from a couple board members into policy prior to you presenting. So you think about that, what
Yep.
you want to do with that. But,
Okay.
and the reason we put that in is because you can't have a ton of information like a day before the meeting. So,
Yep.
and to understand a little bit, I mean, policy is about intent of legislation, so.
Yep.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Approval of Heartland Cosmetology overnight field trip.
That we have 2 state qualifiers in cosmetology. Be traveling to Indianapolis for state competition, just requesting approval for that trip for
You
them.
got their names?
I do. Let me pull it up real quick.
We didn't do recognition, but we can.
Yep. The names are
Sorry.
Rory Poston and Anna Adair. The trip is April 19th and 20th.
Congratulations to them. So, all right.
Heartland already approved it, so we're approving it on our end for the,
Yep. Trying to remember to do a motion. Here, let's do both of these together. Approval for senior field trip
Yep.
Chicago, huh? Cool.
Yep, May 22nd. Their agenda is as follows. They'll leave pretty early in the morning, 6:45. Day in Chicago includes a 360 Chicago tour, Blue Man Group, performance and behind-the-scene tour of that, Lincoln Park Zoo, Magnificent Mile, taking a water taxi, Navy Pier. They depart at 7:30 p.m. They load the buses and they get home around 11. It's just kind of a culminating senior event the day before graduation.
awesome.
Congratulations, seniors. Be safe. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Raymer, second. Mr. Bucher. Discussion.
I don't see a cost, just curious.
I believe, Randy, if you know this answer,
For the senior trip?
yeah. I believe that the cost of the trip, just double checking here, is covered by the school as far as the buses and things. I'm going to guess that meals potentially, or spending money would be covered by, students. But I think that, the zoo and those things, I believe, is covered by probably by the senior class.
Yeah, we went to St. Louis and I didn't spend a dime other than what I ate.
Yeah,
so-
we went to Chicago when I was a senior
Okay.
a couple years ago, 3 or 4.
Is there? Rick?
No.
Oh. Did we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
There's no Heartland update tonight. I was out last month, so I will look at the minutes and come back with you.
Okay.
I'll share an email out to you.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I didn't make it down there to do a Lean Six Sigma. I'm just too buried, and I do apologize to all the students and the people at Heartland for that. So, legislative update. Let's see. Mr. Penrod's out.
I mean, they're out of session, so, it's just all the digest that's coming into school superintendents on interpretation, application of applicable laws. So, like I said, the first one rolled out, I think, 2 days ago, and some more in today, and so we just continue to digest that and just see what we need to do, and then we need to get together as a policy committee and hammer those things out, so.
Yeah, and as you look at some of the legislation, though, some of it is tedious, right? So an ISBA is a really good resource. Superintendent comments?
Just a couple of things. One, obviously, spring sports are in full swing. If the rain can stay away, we might get more things in, but they're off and running and doing well. We had the balloon launch, and we'll be highlighting that as one of the things we're highlighting in May. I don't know if any of you had a chance to go onto the live feed, but it's a pretty exciting event. We partnered with Bluffton High School, and then also it incorporated some conversations with 2 schools from the Ukraine. The balloon launch went off without a hitch, except that the tracking device that they use to track where it's going quit working. So when they went to retrieve it, this is how accurate the guy who runs and flies those balloons. The advanced team, they thought it was going to land in Ohio, and the advanced team, when they got the phone call from a farmer that said, I was sitting in the field and this parachute came out of the sky and landed in my field, we're within 3 miles of the drop zone. So the kids will come in May and talk about that. I've seen some phenomenal video and pictures from that event. The plan right now is in late April that will come back and do a second launch here to compare data from their experiments during the eclipse to data during the same time frame and not an eclipse to see if there's a difference. So that was great. Had a math team that won Wabash County Math Competition, and we're going to recognize them in May. Shelley, Darla, and I will be attending the Indiana School Business Official State Conference May 8th through the 10th, just to gain more information and continue to grow. I did send you guys some information, and really today is just more just to discuss or just bring it to your attention. As you know, Dr. Stevens came on initially as a business manager and then was interim for a while, and now is business manager again, is currently under contract with administrative assistants. We pay them each day that he is here. They bill us. He receives a portion of that pay. And mileage, I've talked with Jeff multiple times. Every Tuesday and Thursday we talk. But I've talked to him multiple times about his willingness and ability to stay on for the foreseeable future, and he's willing to do that. His words were, as long as my wife lets me. But he and I work well together. His knowledge is invaluable. The numbers that are turning green up there, because that guy is sitting in that chair for us and putting the best interest of Manchester forward. You know, he and I have talked. He currently, and I'll just say this, you know, part of what Jeff and I want to do is very transparent. We currently pay administrative assistants $675. Administrative assistants gets a third of that. Dr. Stevens gets 2/3 of that amount. Plus mileage, they bill us for his mileage. After he and I talked, my recommendation, or at least for consideration that I would bring in May, would be $550 a day that he's here. You know, he works roughly about 100 days a year, but he's available. He's never turned down a phone call or text from me if I had a question, you know, on his off day. But, you know, that allows him to continue to advance what we're doing, working with me, also strengthening Shelley and Darla and their financial knowledge. I mean, it's a win for us. At $550 a day, we'd be saving about $20,000 a year. I've spoken with administrative assistants, and they're willing to drop his current signed contract down to the end of June. Right now, it's the end of December, which would allow him on July 1 then basically to be employed by Manchester Community Schools at a contracted rate of $550 a day that he works. Mr. Stevens doesn't require medical insurance. We don't withhold teacher retirement fund for him because he's already retired. So, you know, we're recognizing that savings in that process also. And he's, you know, he's heard me say it to his face, and I know he doesn't like me bragging about him, but he doesn't get any better than financially and his background and his knowledge. So just know that, you know, that's my proposal. I'll be bringing something more solid to you in May for consideration for either May approval if you desire to go that direction. That would be my recommendation, or June approval, which would allow him then on July 1 to move to our basically being a contract employee for us through us. So just a FYI of something that's coming.
Awesome.
Other than that, that's what I have. We're, you know, wrapping up. It's already mid-April. There aren't a whole lot of days left this year for me coming in with the treadmill already on full spin. It's been very quick. But, you know, graduation will be coming up here in a little over 30 calendar days. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. School board comments?
Really appreciate getting this information days early.
I'd like to remember our I'm thinking about all the teachers that have to go through the science of teaching or the literacy training that's going on. I don't know if anyone knows about that. They're required to do 40 hours of online work and 15 hours of Zoom side, 15 hours of non-Zoom training, and 25 hours of homework followed by a praxis test. It's kind of an insult to professionals that have been around for a long time, and it's just thrown on them from the state very quickly, and it's making a lot of confusion and a lot of heartache. So I'm thinking about them and all of them in the state that are having to do this. So wanted to share that.
And I think Mr. Booker, it'll be interesting to see where how that ends up morphing and developing, because I know there's some significant pushback, for professionals that are already in the field that have had this training and are being required to do it again and to test again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with you. I feel for them, and it's 3 years away, but they have to have it done in 3 years.
They're pushing for this summer,
So
but
we'll see
yeah,
where that transpires.
yeah.
Additional comments? So, Mr. Shaw, I did say that, and I totally believe it. And if I could go back in time and change that whole situation, I'd do it. But I want to be honest with you guys, they're just our little community, there's just love in my heart, and one way or another, we'll find our way through all this stuff. I mean, I've thought about this and thought about this. This school system, I work at a lot of huge organizations, medium organizations, small organizations, and this little nut here has been a hard one to get a handle on. And those green dots up there, we've got no time to relax, right? Like we've dug out of a hole, we're kind of on the surface, right? We're treading water, but, education, there's going to be a change in education when people realize, and it goes to your point, Mr. Bucher, where the legislators are trying to do things to improve education, and then there's people that think education's where it needs to be, and then you've got competition from charter schools, you've got, Purdue Polytechs, So when education will reach its full money is when people understand to embed continuous improvement skill sets in these processes, just like we do in every other industry and every other business. And then until that happens, we'll continue to have arguments and we'll continue to have things happen to us that shouldn't happen to us. When I look at schools and these policies, these policies we established, we've actually got accolades from DUAB in the past of what we did. Tying that ESSER money down into a list with priority that the board approved. Doing the things. The one thing they were looking from us, and now you see some of the evidence of why they were doing that, and they're sharp people and good people. We did a lot of good things, and they were basically came back to us and said, hey, we're going to make these state best practice. One thing we didn't tie is the fraud. So we were there's levels of control that we teach. A level 0 are words on a piece of paper. A policy, the U.S. Constitution, meant to be interpreted, apt to be forgotten, etc. Interpreted the way you want. A level 1 control is where we take that and we put a visual control out there. Okay? I've heard a little noise about a stop sign over here in front of the high school. That's a visual control. What's it do for people? It's out in front of their face. It makes default the right action, like the white line at a railroad crossing. Right, that's a level 1 control. Level 2 control is where we do system fixes. Why did we spend the money on a new financial system? Number one, because we didn't know where things were at. The reporting was horrible, right? Accounts were being moved around and here and there. I'll run it every month and I could see where, and this was a past superintendent, right? Moving money around. Where do we get, so to your comment about the legislators and stuff and the whole fraud incident, which I'm still not done with because we're still getting our 111,000 and our 250 back from somebody, right? Because somebody failed us in security. And what we look for is level 3 controls where things can't happen. And that's things like using checks, right, versus wire fraud, so the opportunity can't even happen, is what we do. And so we can those green dots are fine in the activity we're doing, but I hope nobody's ready to rest, right? Because one thing I know about being on this school board is there'll be things in the future that we have to deal with, you know? So that's kind of my comments to things. I get a little wound up. The other thing is, when I look at this school corporation, and you didn't bring up the vision report, right? But I will bring up the vision report. I kind of like some things I see in the vision report from the vision group in the county. Matter of fact, we're kind of doing up in St. Joe County, when you're talking about a hub of excellence, that's exactly what we've been putting together for 3 years up there, and we're almost ready to start constructing it. And it doesn't have one school corporation, it doesn't have two school corporations, there's 8 to 10 school corporations that are involved in that, and now all the schools from the diocese. So people can work together for the betterment. And a matter of fact, I hate to bring it up again, but I thought that's what we were going to do with that $4 million that we gave back to the feds here a few years ago. That didn't help us at all. And so if you're going to be on the Heartland board, you need to be going to those meetings, because we need to know what's going on down there. Because as far as I'm concerned, if we're not calling that a hub of excellence, you know, it sure is to me in a certain degree. And if we want to look at that, but I'd also say we need to look at some hubs in North Manchester, Indiana too. You know, when we invest in things, we need to be looking at our local community for investment. So.
And then when they start clarifying more, and I think it'll be late fall, the new graduation requirements, we'll make sure we do a presentation, and you will find that the new requirements really fall in with what Mike just spoke to, what the Envision Group is looking at, what Grow Wabash County is looking at, what Harlan Career Center does on a daily basis. The new grad requirements really are making a shift to, for lack of better terms, experiential learning, internships, partnerships, industry, employability skills. So all those components really are going to become extremely intertwined. I went to a presentation on that with John and Jody from the high school. I think there's some kinks, and I think the DOE knows there's some kinks that they're working through. But when we get those things refined, we'll make sure there's a presentation to the board so they can kind of see what those new requirements are and where we're heading. But definitely aligns, Mike.
No. Motion to adjourn.
No, hold on, I got one more.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
So the Manchester lost, former superintendent and former principal the past week, Diana Showalter.
Yeah, thank you.
Just something to take note of, and, we lost a former leader, both as a principal and a superintendent within the last several days, so.
I'll tell you, she was a great mentor, and I put this on one of the pages I saw it posted on. She actually hired me when I was junior high principal here. Took a chance on a young guy, and really was a good mentor, and you want somebody who's all about kids and all about community. It was Diana Showalter.
She was Rebecca's first principal when she was out at Laketon, so she was a good woman.
She was one of them on the road trip up to the Kalamazoo Promise, so we had some good time together, so thank you, Brian. Anything else? Motion to adjourn? Mr. Bucher, second. Mr. Raymer, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.